All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So today we are talking about how to understand and navigate through the renovation loan process. Before we get into all of that, just like to speak a little bit about myself, just to give you context about my experience. I've been a real estate advisor since 2018. I've sold over 200 homes in my career. I've flipped 7 houses. I've renovated a duplex. I have a close relationship with a contractor who I utilized when I went through the process. Um, I purchased my primary residence using the renovation loan, so I have gone through this experience very recently. Um, and then finally, as a disclaimer, I'm not a lender, so I may not have all of the answers when it comes to the specifics and the different variations about this. So really, all I'm going to speak about today is my experience with my specific process. So here are the topics that we'll go through: just an intro to the renovation loan, advantages of using one, the requirements needed to go through it, the overall process from a high level, and then I'm going to show you guys an example of what the numbers look like for me. So as an intro, the renovation loan rolls the mortgage and the remodeling costs together into one loan. The loan is based on a home's estimated after repair value. So there's several advantages of the renovation loan. Um, One is you're going to avoid depleting your savings or maxing out credit cards to pay for the improvements or needed repairs for a house. It also helps with refreshing and revitalizing neighborhoods because it, uh, gives another incentive to improve properties and home values. It allows buyers to build equity faster by increasing the value of their home. It peaks the affordability crisis. So, for a lot of people right now, the challenge is inventory and home prices. A lot of buyers are struggling to secure updated homes in today's market just because updated homes are typically selling fast, a lot of which are going in competitive situations. So a lot of buyers are getting beat out, or they're just unable to afford them. Also, you're able to avoid compensating for an investor's profit margin. So a lot of flippers in today's market, they are the ones really winning because not only are they getting the equity growth from just the home sale, but also they have a built-in profit margin included in their sale. So by going with your own renovation loan and doing the renovation yourself, you're saving that 10, 20, or however so much percent profit margin that you would be paying to an investor if you were to buy a house that's already renovated versus doing it yourself. And then finally, it offers guidance and assistance in navigating a renovation project to inexperienced consumers or investors, as there's resources provided to you when you go through the renovation loan that help streamline the process and make it easier for someone who may not be as familiar with renovating a house. So high level renovation loan requirements. Again, this is specific to my experience. So this is for the conventional renovation loan that I used. High level requirements, minimum 5% down payment. Um, by the way, in some circumstances, you could go lower. I was told it could be as low as 3% in cases of first-time home buyers or low to moderate income level areas. Minimum of 620 credit score. House must be previously occupied or at least 1 year old. Really, what matters is that there must have been a past occupancy certificate at some point. So even if the home has been sitting vacant for a while, that's okay as long as at one point there was a certificate of occupancy. There must be one general contractor assigned to the project. The consumer cannot be the general contractor. So if I have relationships with several subcontractors, I can't be the one that goes out and gets estimates from those subcontractors. There has to be one general contractor assigned to the project, and there must be segregation between the homeowner and the contractor. They have to be two completely separate people. The renovation costs are limited to 75% of the after repair value, which if you do the math for, the cost of the house, it's very rare that that'll ultimately come close. For me, for example, in my case scenario, I bought a $245,000 house and my renovation cost was only 60,000. So 75% of 240,000 is a much higher number than what I spent. And for most people to be that way too. For multifamily buyers, a borrower must live in one unit and the property cannot exceed 4 units in total. So the renovation loan process. Step one, the borrower must apply for the loan. The lender will connect you with a HUD, what's called a HUD consultant or an inspector. This person is very involved throughout the entire process, both with you and the contractor. The consultant will help figure out the scope of the project. So what the consultant really does is they serve as the experienced party of this whole project for the consumer who may lack experience in flipping houses. So you're going to have contractors involved, then you're going to have the consultant there, and the consultant's job is really to make sure that the consumer is not overspending or I guess getting taken advantage of by the contractor in this process. So they help figure out the scope of the project. They establish the project scope and obtain contractor estimates with the consumer. Once the consumer gets the estimates, they submit it to the consultant, review it together. Then the consultant will inspect the property based on the estimates and create what's called a specification of repairs. So this is just an outline for the renovation based on the estimates that were provided. That specification of repairs is then submitted to the lender, and the lender will have to approve it. They then do an appraisal. The appraisal is going to be based on the after repair value. So it's going to take into account all of the cost of the total project. It's going to tack that onto the purchase price. And then with all that information, they're going to do an appraisal based on past sales that are similar to what they foresee the house to look like given the scope of work. You then close on the property and then the renovation starts. Once the renovation starts, the inspector will have to be very involved in going through, making sure that the work has been completed and inspected before sending out the draws. So as long as everything's being done per the estimate, they will then issue the draws to the contractor. Once the project is almost fully complete, they will send the HUD consultant out there just to do one final inspection of the property. And if everything appears to be all closed out and ready to go, they'll then request that all the permits are closed out, and then they will issue the final draw once they receive that. So that, again, that's from a very high level what the process entails. For me, it was extremely smooth and easy, but I was fortunate enough to have a contractor that was very reliable, very responsive. I had a good relationship with them. They took on pretty much the bulk of all the work associated with the renovation. I just kind of sat back and did nothing, and it was the HUD consultant and my contractor handling all this process on their own. So here's an example of what the numbers would look like. Again, this is all based off of my specific house that I bought. So my purchase price was $245,000. Down payment for me was $18,000. That did include a $7,000 credit that I was able to negotiate with the seller. So that down payment would have been higher if I did not have that credit. My interest rate was 7.5 at a time where interest rates for most people were probably closer to 7 or 7.25. So there was a slight increase in interest rate just given the fact that I was going with the loan.
And that's typical to have a little bit of an increase for a renovation loan.
From my understanding, yes.
Okay.
My ARV appraised value was 315,000, and my renovation project was estimated to be $60,000. My lender fees that were included were 1.125% of the loan amount paid in points. So that's $3,300. There were miscellaneous renovation loan fees that totaled out to being $5,000, which I have detailed out over here on the right. There was a renovation contingency holdback, so that's 10% of the total renovation cost. So for me, the exact number was 5,950. I just used 6,000 as a round number, but essentially up front, they will hold back 10% just in case, anything goes out of their upfront estimate for the project
Is that
renovation.
like earnest money, comparable to earnest money? Or
No, so the way I would compare it is similar to like if you're selling a house and there's any sort of repair that has to be completed after closing that's agreed upon between the buyer and the seller, the title company will request 1.5 times whatever that repair cost is, just in case anything goes wrong. They want additional funds held back. So pretty much the same thing here. They're just asking for contingency holdback. If none of that is used, it's important to note, and I was informed by the company that you do not get a check after closing for that holdback. It's just applied to your loan. So, and then
Out of curiosity, how do you come up with the cost for the renovation? Like, did you have the contractor come in with you and say, this is what I'm estimating it'll be, and that's what you bring back to the lender?
correct, yeah. So for me, again, I was able to have a pretty good idea of what it was going to cost, but usually how these how they're supposed to work is if a consumer has no idea, what a renovation project is going to cost, that's what the HUD consultant is there for. So the HUD consultant is supposed to really meet with the consumer, understand, what all they want to do to the house in advance. And then the consumer, it's their job to find the contractors, obtain the estimates based on the scope of work. And then the whole HUD consultant comes back in to, really make sure that it all makes sense and the consumer's not getting taken advantage of.
And is the HUD consultant local, that they'll come in and see the home?
Yeah.
Okay, and then my next question, sorry,
Very
is this done before you write the offer?
No,
After you have it under contract?
this is after you have it under contract.
Okay, so it doesn't have anything to do with the seller. This is on the buyer side.
Correct.
Working with the lender.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, from the seller's perspective, working with me, it was just a standard loan. There wasn't there's nothing that the seller knew or that I had to disclose about this that, it was anything different than just a standard conventional loan process.
Okay.
But did additional access have to be provided to contractors?
Well, for me, it was just one
Okay.
contractor. So it was just standard inspection, due
They
diligence.
came during that time. And
Yep.
Didn't get entry again until closing,
Right.
basically.
Yep. Cool. Well, well, that's pretty much everything I had. So Q&A, any additional?
Bring John
Questions?
to just high level discuss real quick.
Sure.
If that's okay, John.
So we got John Sprangnether with USA Mortgage. Geneva Financial.
So yeah, I think, obviously Matt hit the high level stuff. The biggest thing is your down payment's gonna be based off that purchase price. So like in this case, whatever the number is, you're not factoring in, the renovation cost into the purchase price. So as Matt just alluded to, from the seller's perspective, they don't know, they're not a part of it. You are gonna pay a little bit of a premium on rate as part of that project, but then obviously the goal would be to, once renovations are completed, you would hope that the appraisal would now come in higher, and then you could refinance into a more traditional loan at that point. So really, it has to be the right buyer. Obviously Matt has a lot of experience with that they can't do it on their own. And so you really it needs to line up where you have a buyer that's willing to, let someone come in and, or has access to a contractor and is willing to, work with the HUD consultant. Because there are some, that's another fee for the HUD consultant. It can be a little costly, but I think the overall net gain you get out of it is so much, very good.
And then when you refinance, it's to today's interest rate.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So, again, if let's say Mac, or whoever gets in for 5% down and they're purchasing 245, so they only owe, well, the appraisal would hopefully, maybe it appraises at 320, 330, what have you, and then you can adjust your loan off that new appraised value then. So maybe you come in at 85% or 90% or 80%, depending on how the value is now that it's remodeled. So
Are there any rules around the renovation, as to say, could he have done new HVAC, new water heater, new roof?
yeah. I mean, the biggest things are they want it to be, it's got to stay there.
Got
So
it.
like, redoing a kitchen, redoing HVAC, redoing, putting a pool in, stuff like that, that's gonna stay with the property is what they're looking for.
What about foundation repair?
I think it could. It gets a
Mhm.
little tricky on the, because then we're gonna see that as a lender. So it gets foundation. I have not seen it.
Okay.
I'm sure it could happen
Yeah.
just in the right situation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they want something, not, what's a good example? Like a hot tub, that can be removed or
Sure.
so, something that's gonna stay with the
Could
property.
you do a pool?
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, did he say that? Sorry.
Because yes,
Okay,
because then it's there.
Not an above ground,
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah,
a blow up.
yeah. So, but yeah, no, it can be a very good product, but I think it's gotta be for the right buyer. It's not for someone that, doesn't have, a ton of down payment and, doesn't have access to, contractors and that sort of thing. So,
And can the buyer live there while it's going on?
could, yeah,
Okay, I didn't know if you.
because I mean,
can to
you
not-
close, the day of closing, that's when all the renovation starts.
Right,
So if you can handle it,
Just depends on like the scope of work that's
Right.
being
Yeah.
done. It's just like a bathroom remodel.
right.
yeah,
Sure.
I mean, absolutely, you could if you can,
Right.
live through the
And
construction.
how long did your renovation take? Or is it finished?
Mine's finished. Mine took about 2 months,
Okay,
2 or 3 months, but it was also
That's
because,
also with a contractor that,
Actually showed
is
up.
timely
Yeah.
and-
yeah, well, actually, I think it was, maybe a little bit longer than usual because, of the HUD consultant being involved in the process. And
Oh,
making sure
okay.
that everything's inspected and permits are pulled, because, like an average flipper may not pull permits
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they don't have someone breathing down their contractor's neck on making sure everything's done right, so they're just putting everything together a lot quicker.
And what did you say was the down payment, the minimum down
So
payment?
it depends. So there's a conventional renovation and then an FHA. Multiple. So FHA is 3.5, same. Conventional side, it's 3 or 5 based off
Oh.
the parameter of the buyer. So,
And did you say you have to live there or you don't, you can use it for flips? Is that what you're doing?
gotta be your primary residence.
Okay.
Gotta be your primary. And even on, as Matt mentioned, on the multifamily, you have to
Live
reside.
in one,
Otherwise, it's an investment property.
okay.
And so it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah.
This is for primary residence.
So, but if someone wanted to get into a home and wanted to, do the work on it, this is a great way to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, especially a multifamily. I mean, if
Mhm.
you can get into a multifamily and you're residing in one of the residents, and so you see that a lot as well.
Yeah, and then you can make money on it.
Yeah,
too.
for
So
sure.
there's a question, will you repeat it back one? Do you have to have a HUD person assigned?
I can only speak to, I would assume yes.
Yeah.
Your lender's gonna want a HUD consultant involved.
Mhm.
For me, I didn't have a choice.
Okay.
I didn't want them involved because it's additional money and I didn't need them, so.
Yeah.
But they said it was required.
For
Say
the,
that again?
for the lender to have the HUD consultant, the one kind of
Oh, yeah.
running the show, and making sure
Yeah.
everything's on the up and up with draws and that sort of thing. Again, I can't speak for every lender, but I would assume.
What's
Yes.
the
Would that be
cost
the
on
same
that?
as a disbursement company, or is that different?
No, I mean, the HUD, counterpart of the show, right? I mean, they're the ones,
It's like for the head contractor and then
Yeah,
yeah.
your contractor's a subcontractor, kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
I
mean,
think-
the way it was explained to me by Brian,
Yeah.
he really said the HUD consultant is there to help an inexperienced consumer deal with the contractor without like getting taken advantage of. So
Mhm.
they're making sure when a contractor's bidding out a job, they're making sure, number one, it's right, and then when they're actually doing the work, that it's consistent with what they bid out and everything.
It's kind of a checks and balances
Right,
person.
that's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
Especially
Yeah.
from the lender perspective, because they don't want that buyer to not be upside down. or,
Exactly.
and
I think
get
it's smart.
get
Yeah.
taken advantage.
But how much more was that? How much is that?
I think it was like $700 or.
Yeah.
Okay, not
But then
ridiculous.
you have the contingency as well, the 10%. And so, I mean, there is some upfront cost,
Mhm.
but it's, again, it's for a good place. It's for a good spot so that there's not overages and that sort of thing.
Is the HUD representative assigned through the lender?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Now,
So-
if somebody does have the funds to do a renovation on their own, is there a benefit to doing the renovation loan versus?
No, I mean, it depends where the rates are, right?
Okay.
And I mean, if they're cash heavy, cash is king. So I mean,
Right.
if it kind of depends on, that person's financial situation.
Sure.
If it's gonna really strap them, maybe this is, maybe this is better, put 3-5% down, what have you,
Okay.
and hold your cash and do this.
And you can choose your own contractor. It's not somebody that has to meet like, well, I mean, they have to be a professional contractor.
License and all that
Right,
crap. Yep, license, bonded, all that.
but you get
good
your
stuff.
choice besides that. It just can't be you.
Yes.
Yep.
And if you don't have one, the lender can work with, to help
Mhm.
refer somebody.
Yeah, I think in today's market, really the biggest value of doing this as opposed to buying something that's already updated is you don't have to, in most cases, compete on an updated house. So like for me, I bought a house for $245. It was, a grandma special that was just dated and I didn't have any competition on the front end. So it had good bones and whatnot. But now that it's completely decked out, that same house, if I were to list it, I'd probably list for $325 and it most likely would sell for $350.
Over.
But I'm all in at $315.
Mhm.
So I got the
Equity.
equity growth, plus I got to customize the house to my liking.
Right. And is there a minimum amount of time that you have to stay there? Did you say that?
No, shouldn't, no.
No,
I mean,
like,
you
it's
could
not
sell
like
it
a
whenever.
1031.
Yeah, I
thing.
mean,
Okay.
when you purchase it, if it's your primary residence, it's your primary residence, and then, 60
What
days,
happens after
what happens
that?
after that,
So you could rent it out, you could sell it.
Is there a limitation on when you can refi? Like, you have to have it for so long?
no, I mean,
Okay.
you can flip it.
Interesting.
Now,
Let's go for it, girls.
There's some quirks in there, because most lenders get buybacks within 6 months.
Right.
But well, technically, yes.
Yeah, we get it.
Yeah, so,
Anything else?
Ask for questions from the audience, so.
All right, do we have any questions from the audience chat?
It's been nice and vocal.
Got all the questions.
She's probably wondering for herself.
Did you have a home and refi into a renovation loan?
Yeah,
Yeah, you can
So-
do a refi renovation. Yes.
How interesting is that? So,
Do you have to get a HUD person?
well, we
Where do you
answered all that
fund?
already.
Yep, okay,
Yeah, that was A4.
all right.
so I guess the refi renovation though would essentially be the same as like a HELOC in a way.
Kind of,
And you would all, and you'd be redoing your rate.
correct.
Eh,
That's
So that-
the rub on that.
right.
Everyone right now has, or going back 3 or 4 years, everyone has a very low interest rate.
Mhm.
So to tack on,
Yeah, what are HELOC rates right now? Like if you wanna do
Not good.
not good, I mean,
like
not.
if you wanted to do a kitchen upgrade in a house, 9 or 10?
Yeah.
Holy moly, Batman.
Yeah,
But that's a sub loan,
Right,
right? That's not your whole loan.
correct, yeah, it's a second.
No, but I
Or it's-
mean-
or it's
So
a-
you could take out
I would.
80 at
Correct.
the 10. and
Correct.
that. But
Correct.
it's, there's
Yeah.
some credit cards where you can still get 0 for a year on.
For sure.
credit
No,
card,
but
so you
yeah.
Definitely want to explore.
A home equity line of credit right now is. gonna
Right.
be-
That's
Yeah,
tough.
I mean, if you don't have a mortgage, then it's first position, but obviously if you do have one, it's in second position, it's a second. lien.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
uh,
Second position. Don't want those loans.
So overall, it was a good experience for you.
Yeah, overall for me, it was very.
And what
smooth.
upgrades did you do to your home?
Everything. I pretty much approved everything except like exterior stuff. So like roof, siding, windows, that's all the same. But new basement, new water heater, HVAC was already new. Everything on the main floor, kitchen, bathrooms, flooring, doors, trim, paint.
Is there a
We
reason-
need to take a tour.
We need before and after pictures.
I have some.
Did the contractor, like, when they were, like, say you were an inexperienced consumer, like
Mhm.
they were saying, did they send over a list of all contractors that you could then vet and do your due diligence on?
No, I mean,
it could happen, but you didn't.
He-
need
yeah,
it.
for me, I didn't even
Was
come
Matt
close to that.
on there already, or you submitted and said, I want this contractor, and they approved it?
I told them I was working with Max.
And they were like,
Yeah, they
cool.
were just like, cool.
Because I'm assuming he has some certification that they are.
You really just, I believe it's just, license and bonded.
Okay, cause
I
yeah, I
can double
think
check
that's
that,
the
but-
tricky thing is for the inexperienced consumer, like I had a client that did a renovation loan, like with John.
It was,
Guillaume,
I'm drawing.
Guillaume,
Yeah,
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 my
he's
favorite,
awesome.
my
No, I
favorite.
can-
But that was like 2018, it was our
It was
19th.
a while ago, yeah.
But they didn't give a list, and so then luckily we just had like, I had experience, like my one client had used this one, but he basically vetted 3, I wanna say, and then, but I don't know, but it's interesting if you don't have someone like you, it can complicate the process a little bit.
Yeah,
Cause then you've got
totally.
3 separate
And you-
bids. You're
Any sort of
having to-
reliability on their time.
Correct, you just, yeah, so that probably is the hardest thing.
Well, I think like John said, this is for like a specific buyer who has resources.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise it
You
really
were
wouldn't.
Like
make
the
sense.
perfect
Right,
position
Yeah.
to do it.
right,
For sure.
right.
It's not just.
Is there a reason you didn't do the roof and windows and that sort of thing?
I just didn't
Feel
wanna
like
spend the
needed-
additional money.
Mhm.
It's all fine, just.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, we'll be looking out for our invitations
Yeah.
to a housewarming party.
Yeah, for sure,
Thank
anytime.
you. Yeah.
All right,
Thanks, Matt.
thanks, guys.
Sign off.